I'll give you an example, and this won't offend anyone because it's so long ago. A magazine had asked for a request of a review, and it was a model we produced. It was an 8-inch two-way, and it was associated actually with a passive subwoofer. So this was very early on. This was in the early 80s, mid 80s. And we were actively involved in trying to refine the subjective versus objective evaluations. The NRC was working hard on that. I was actively involved, regularly doing not only designs of loudspeakers in that environment, but also participating in the development of the knowledge around this kind of subjective evaluations of double-blind screen testing and measurements. And we did, I submitted a system to a magazine, and the reviewer called me about a month later to simply warn me that, he didn't think that this particular loudspeaker would make the grade. And I was a little concerned that, and he had sent me some very antiquated measurements of this speaker on some test system he had. Now you can imagine the test system back in those days was rather antiquated, at least from him. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I said, okay, well, why don't you send the speakers back to me? Maybe there's something wrong with them. I'll check them out. And I also, at the same time, invited him and his editor to fly to Ottawa, where all of these tests were being conducted, to maybe participate in a double-blind screen test. And they agreed, so they came, and first of all, they were very impressed with the way we approached this. I got the actual system that the reviewer was worried about in terms of how it was going to be written up and how he would be able to justify giving it a good review or not. So we brought the speakers in. I did the measurements on them. They were fine. They were the way they should have been. I injected them into a double-blind screen test. Now this system was about, at retail, this system would have been about $600, $700 for the system. We just happened to have one of the speakers that this magazine felt was state-of-the-art. We just happened to have one of those around. So we included, because we wanted to get them to, we had something they could call their anchor. Something, in fact, not only was their anchor, it was something they said was the epitome of technology today in loudspeakers. And we happened to have one. I put that in the test as well.
What price would that one have been?
That one was 10 times as much money. That was $7,000. All right, so there's the dynamic. Well, to make a long story short, first of all, these two reviewers had never been subjected to a double-blind screen test. So you can imagine how they must have been feeling, knowing that they had to make some judgments. So they were putting their reputation on the line, and they were hanging it on their ears only. They'd never done this before. So they were sweating, and they were literally sweating. These guys didn't realize what they were into until they got there. So here we sat them in this test, and we ran 2 formal 20-minute rounds with a 20-minute break in between. A very standard way of doing it. Takes a little time to orient yourself to the room. We did all the due diligence in getting the test results that we normally would get. And to make a long story short, they picked PSB, and they didn't like the other one. So, and that magazine has never questioned anything we've ever produced since. So that's just an example of how important we feel that double-blind screen testing is. Because I don't care who you are, you will always be biased. And if you want to be true to yourself, don't get caught being too biased.